Hey friends, welcome to the Swing My Heart podcast. Come join me, your host Nicole, for some hope-filled conversations about heartfelt entertainment that makes your heart swing. Hey Hearties, welcome to the Swing My Heart podcast. I'm your host Nicole, joined by my co-host Theresa, once again to talk about When Calls the Heart, Season 11, Episode 7, Facing the Music. It was written by Paul Redford and directed by Stacey N. Harding. Elizabeth hopes for the best when Tom Thornton visits with an exciting opportunity for the town's choir. Rosemary and Bill interview a source. Lucas considers his options. What were your hot takes on this episode, Theresa?
So I kind of expected this, but I felt like this episode was very much like a filler episode, kind of waiting for a bigger climax. Usually when there's like a two-parter, usually the first part is a little bit more of setup, less payoff. So I was kind of expecting that for this episode, and I think after last week's episode, obviously it's not going to live up to that. That was amazing.
No, it was hard to top.
Yeah, so I wasn't super high on this episode, but it did excite me for where it's going. So that was good.
Yeah. Yes, it did set up some things very nicely for this week's episode, especially Nathan and Elizabeth's storyline.
Right.
I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
And I can share more of my thoughts when we get to them later on in the episode.
I have a lot of thoughts. I think we both do. So yeah, definitely get to those in a minute.
Maybe some different opinions, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's totally fine. It's good for people to have different opinions because that means that we're thinking on our own 2 feet, which is great.
Yes. But anyway, the investigation. We got some movement in this episode, which I loved.
Yeah, I'm glad they're actually collecting proof. I know they've tried to collect proof the last few episodes, but it was very minimal. Very minimal. Nothing they could take to court.
No.
And I feel like they're actually starting to collect some real evidence and actually bordering on being able to reopen in this case. So we're moving in the right direction.
Yes.
It's a little slow, but we're moving in the right direction.
Yes, we are. And why don't we talk about that first scene with Bill, Rosemary, and Nathan? Now, first, before we get into the investigation talk, that maybe, possibly, could in the future be connected actually to the shooting, but we don't know yet. The wanted poster on the wall behind Nathan for Casimir Shaw, I think I pronounced his name right. He is a big-time rum runner. And we know from the episode 11 synopsis that there are rum runners coming into town. So I don't think that is a coincidence.
Oh, no. That was 100% a setup for what's to come later. Like, I was surprised they dropped it this early, but I definitely think that's not going away. We're going to see more of that. And I think it kind of shows that maybe, you have the focus on this investigation and possible suspects, or at least trying to, disprove what was, previously decided that Pike shot Lucas.
Yeah.
And I think because they're focusing so much on that, they might be zoning in on one thing, but really the truth is out here. Like they're zoning here, but I think the big picture, there might be something big at stake here. So I think it kind of was a little insight into that. Maybe, we're focusing on Pike, and then Nathan points to the wanted poster is like, the Mounties are tied up at the moment. And it's kind of like wink, wink. There's something big going on in the background. I think that's going to blow up later.
Of course, we know from the previous episode that Pike worked for Union City Holdings, and we all know that's owned by Montague. Nathan brushes it off, which I found was kind of interesting. But Bill argues it's a connection between the two. And of course, Nathan wants more proof, as he should, because
Yeah.
I mean, you need the proof to be able to open the case.
It's easy to point to something and say, there's a connection. That means basically like he did it. And we see this all the time in the Hallmark mystery movies where maybe there's a piece of evidence and maybe one character is convinced that that is the evidence. But really, when you are in law enforcement, you see that maybe a little piece of evidence could just be a coincidence. You know, like it doesn't always immediately point to that, or it's not enough proof to say, okay, this person, we're gonna go check their house with a warrant type thing.
Yeah. And I love, just briefly, I gotta mention Rosemary's comment to Nathan when he's like, and Rosemary's like, it's more than
Yeah, Rosemary's impatient to solve this case for sure.
Oh my gosh. They have a transcript of an interview with Pike's mother, Hazel, which includes an alibi. It was considered by the investigators, but then Pike confessed, and they were worried Hazel didn't have all her faculties, and she lives in Union City.
I think there's a few interesting nuggets in there that, first of all, Hazel, they've come to the conclusion that Hazel doesn't have all her faculties. And I think that's interesting. We should keep that in mind as viewers because it was something they didn't need to point out, but they did. And obviously it could be she's misunderstood, yada, 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 but I think it's important to hold on to that piece of information.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that, they were about to prove Pike's innocence, but then he confessed. That's interesting as well.
Fishy.
Yes. So personally, I'm on the train of believing that Pike is not completely innocent yet.
Maybe.
That's where I'm at, I would say.
And just skipping ahead to Bill, Rosemary, and Hazel. Now, this is not about the case, but I thought it was a touching moment when Hazel mentions that Clayton was her miracle baby. And we see that Rosemary relates to that because it took her a long time to have Goldie, or her and Lee to have Goldie.
It was very, very sweet. And, sometimes you forget that Rosemary and Lee had a miracle baby. And I love that being mentioned. But on the investigative side of things,
can we trust Hazel? I don't know yet.
I would say it's a very good way to emotionally hook Rosemary onto her side. I would say, obviously she wouldn't know that saying that, but when Rosemary made that connection with her, Hazel jumped on it right away. She didn't say, "Oh, that's amazing." She said, "Oh, so you understand why he's innocent, why I want to defend his innocence." So it was a sweet moment, but Hazel jumped on it like that immediately, which could be a manipulative tactic. And maybe I'm being sinister, and maybe I'm being my investigative mind from Hallmark mysteries and whatnot. But I noticed that, and I thought, Rosemary's emotionally invested in this person. I think that might make her vulnerable later on.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't pick up on that in particular, but I agree with what you're saying. It could be that she's being manipulative. So, who knows yet if we can trust her.
You never know.
Hazel also claims it couldn't have been Clayton since he was with her the night of the election. She had a bad fall and injured her hip. According to her, the Mounties forced him to confess because they needed somebody to blame. And then before that, she says that as far as she knows, Clayton voted for Lucas, which is interesting.
I'll get into this a little bit more later as we'll discuss it, but her blame of the Mounties was interesting to me because we know who's basically in charge of this investigation. Hardgraves. we know who's in charge of this, and I think that could definitely point to some corruption for sure. What are your thoughts on it?
I agree with you completely on that. Yeah.
That was my first thought when she said that. She's like, I think the Mounties did. I was like, oh, Hardgraves.
Hardgraves is crooked.
I mean, we've known that for a while, but especially at the beginning of season 11.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And then jumping to the second scene with Bill, Rosemary, and Nathan, when they share more about their conversation with Hazel. She got the money for her surgery a week before Clayton confessed and was arrested. And the money came from a good friend of Clayton's, as Hazel says, that he met at Mass. And Nathan believes that Clayton could have been paid to take the fall. And I think Bill and Rosemary believe that too, possibly. He never did any after-hours work with Montague. He was just a shift worker and never worked with him directly. And along with the donation, this friend also sent flowers to Hazel when she was in the hospital. He'd only know what hospital if he paid for the surgery. And, you know, they say Montague, which I'm not doubting it.
Yeah, I don't doubt it for a second. What I will say is the reason why I still think it's possible for Pike to be guilty is that I think that in exchange for his mother's surgery, I think Montague had him do the dirty work and possibly shoot Lucas, possibly take the fall for it. Either way, I think it's definitely possible that maybe Pike is in a way guilty. So
maybe, yeah.
We shall see. Although maybe I watch too many crime shows, so
no, I mean,
like, yeah,
you might not be wrong. No.
Yeah. There's a show I watch sometimes, and it's a like crime cartel type show. And this happens a lot in that show where someone will need something, and in order to fulfill that need, they will do dirty work for the cartel, whether it be, take somebody out, make a deal, meet somebody somewhere, and get involved with crime, even if they were completely innocent.
Yeah.
So it happens a lot, and that's kind of where I'm coming from mentally, but this is When Calls the Heart. This is not the cartel. So so I think it's very possible that Pike will be proven innocent. But that's where my mind is at. I'm trying to, figure it out in a crime solving way.
Yeah. So. And now I might be wrong, but if I remember correctly, I've seen it on some shows that I've watched too. Maybe it's happened on Riverdale before, where this one particular character that's like an antagonist is the one doing all the crimes, is trying to brainwash people in Riverdale to do dirty work for them.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think it happened in one of the last 2 seasons. Yes.
I believe it. I definitely believe it, because it's in shows like that. It's very, very common where someone will be very desperate, and Pike is the type of person who maybe was desperate because his mother fell. She needed this surgery. He needs to take care of her. He's probably the only living relative that she has. And if he's just a shift worker, he's not making enough money to pay for that surgery.
No.
So he's desperate. And yeah.
I'm definitely pretty sure that it happened in the last 1 or 2 seasons. It might have happened in earlier seasons too, but I know for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because this
Yeah.
one person that was trying to destroy the town, I won't spoil it for people who haven't watched, but he was brainwashing people because he so desperately wanted power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The whole idea of people doing things in a desperate situation, it reminds me of the first movie of the Batman trilogy by Christopher Nolan. There's this whole theme of people do things when they're desperate, and not just because they want to be bad or they want to, like get ahead or whatever. A lot of people, they do things because they're desperate. And I think personally, I think that would be a very interesting route to go for Pike. I think maybe he was desperate and did something that maybe even his own mother would never even dream of him doing.
Yeah. And people who watch Riverdale, you will know exactly which character I'm talking about. I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. And people who watch Batman and the other show I'm talking about, which is called Better Call Saul, you'll know exactly
I've heard of that.
Yeah, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, yes. two great shows for sure.
Yes. And just to end off the investigation storyline in this episode, we hear that Nathan is going to call in a favor to have Clayton rerouted for the night on his way to Granville in a penitentiary. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll meet him this week.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. I'm just surprised that Nathan has any like favors in the Mounties just because of the way Hardgraves has made his life difficult.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised he has any kind of sway in this case, but I'd be interested to know who he's getting the favor from. If not Hardgraves, maybe someone else.
And why don't we just go there? It took up a lot of this episode. A lot of repetition. The resort.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, let's just say there was a lot of repetition with the investigation, but even more so with the resort. And I've kind of come to the conclusion with this storyline that there are one or two ways that you can look at it. One is that it's repetitive and just extremely boring, I guess. Or there's the other way you can look at it where, and this is the way I'm choosing to look at it, where you can kind of see it's kind of in a way bringing out a lot of flaws in the people involved, meaning Lee, maybe doing some things that maybe wouldn't completely be, I guess, it feels a little, favoritism corrupt-ish. And Edwin. I don't know, Lee. Yeah. There's Edwin. It's bringing out the worst in him. Although I've always thought he's kind of a little sketchy. So, it's really showing his true colors. And then even Lucas, I feel like is very, very close to going down that road. And I think the only one keeping a level head in all of this is Henry. Yeah. And I think it goes back to the analogy of the addict or the alcoholic, where when you've been addicted to something and you're immersed in it again, you're going to be extra cautious because you know that once you get swept into that, it brings out the worst behaviors. And I think Henry is very conscious about that in a way that maybe Lucas and Lee are not as conscious. And so I think this is bringing out a lot of flaws in Lucas and Lee, which I think isn't a bad thing. That's very interesting. And it's very a good storyline for them because it's showing those flaws. But at the same time, it's letting Henry have a moment to, kind of be the lighthouse in all of this in a way.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to hear your thoughts on it because
I agree with you completely on every single point.
yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Like I
Yeah.
said, you can look at it as, oh, this is just so boring, or you can look at it as this is like it's getting a little corrupted here, and I
Getting a little
think
sketchy.
yeah, and not just for Edwin. There are a lot of things really sketchy about this,
And
but I think it's interesting because I think what Henry sees at this point, and it's becoming clearer and clearer, is I think Henry sees Lucas about to make a lot of the same, not a lot of, but bordering on some of the same mistakes that he made back when he was in power. And I think he's really restraining himself from stepping in and saying, don't do it. But I think eventually he's going to guide Lucas
yeah.
to not maybe make some of those mistakes.
Yeah. One of the Hardys actually pointed this out to me earlier today. She DM'd me and she made this good observation that maybe even though we're getting a lot on the resort, now this isn't, word for word what she said, but she was basically talking about how it could be helping move things along with the investigation, maybe in terms of Edwin, because Edwin is acting really sketchy.
Oh, yeah. In terms of Edwin being sketchy, what we've heard from the writers so far is not exactly that Edwin is guilty as much as
No,
Edwin is an opportunist. And obviously, I'm not someone who's going to say Edwin shot Lucas. I
I
don't
don't think
think
he did. No,
I think Edwin's too much of a coward for that. But I think that
he knows
Edwin,
more.
and I think Edwin is an opportunist who maybe he's got a metaphorical gun to his head at this point, and maybe that's why he's pushing for Montague. Maybe he sees more of an opportunity in Montague than he does in Lucas, and honestly, I think it's gonna blow up, and I think Lucas realizes that he has a bad advisor at this point, a very corrupt advisor, because even though Lucas may not be using the best means to get things done, or at least is
Yeah,
considering some sketchy means, his intentions are good. Edwin's intentions are not good.
not right
And
now.
that
They're
came
not.
out. Yeah, that came out in this episode.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I think he's starting to feel the walls closing in on him.
That first scene, we see Edwin suggest Montague or Jeanette's bid again, and Lucas is like, no, on both of them. But he is still committed to fulfilling the promise of prosperity and jobs. He also mentions Jeanette is not someone they would want to go into business with, and that was after Henry's comment. And I know you
Mhm.
wanted to talk about that before we started recording.
Yeah. So I'm very glad because surprisingly, and I was worried this was just me overthinking things, but surprisingly, one thing about this resort story is that all of the questions that I have or other people have, they are being brought up. Mainly, why is this resort going to bring in bad people? Is the resort a good idea? Are these means kind of corrupt and a little bit favoritistic? And in this episode, they addressed another question of, is this refusal to take Jeanette's bid simply based off of your personal history and the fact that she's your ex? Like, that's
Yeah.
not a good enough reason
Mm-mm.
to, not take a bid.
No.
It's not. And so I think that it was good that Henry brought up that question. Of course, Lucas gave a pretty vague answer about it, and hopefully we'll learn a little bit more. But, Lucas was a little bit evasive with that. So we're still left to wonder, is there more? And obviously, I think we will find out that there is
Yeah,
more. But
because
yeah.
We know
Because
Jeanette.
there needs to be more than just, oh, she's my ex. No.
Yeah. It has been said Jeanette is coming back. So
Yes, which I'm excited to hear about. I think
yes.
that's good.
I mean, if I were in that situation and I had to pick between Montague or Jeanette, I think I would go with Jeanette.
I would go with Jeanette 100%, which is why the ending of this episode was so baffling to me. We'll get to that eventually, but it was
Lucas!
so, I was like, Lucas, what are you doing? What are you doing? And unless he maybe knows something like, oh, I know Montague did not do it, unless he knows that, why?
Why?
Why? Yeah. So, yeah. Either that's the case or Jeanette must have done something really, really bad. Because I was fully expecting for this episode to end with, Edwin saying, you need to call Montague. And then instead of calling Montague, Lucas, flips the script and calls Jeanette. That's how I thought it was going to end. But then when he ended up calling Montague, which we'll talk about in a minute, I'm sure, I was just like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah. Lee informs Lucas that he reached out to 3 different guys, and one of them was Lawrence, who I think was in last season, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Someone that Lee had worked with in the past, and none of them took the bid, and they were very vague with their reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is it just me, or are you getting the sense that maybe Edwin is
Mm-hmm.
telling everyone to
Yep.
not take the...
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. I think he's contacting everyone, possibly, and trying to scare everybody off so that they will only take Montague's bid. And kind of go back to other shows for a minute, but there's a show I love called Sherlock.
I've
You've
heard of
probably
that.
all heard of it. Yeah. There's a great episode in there, though, where there is an antagonist, and he's kind of the main villain of the whole series, but he goes on trial, and despite all of the overwhelming evidence that he committed the crime, all of the people of the jury vote in favor of him being innocent. And it makes no sense for that to happen, but it turns out later on that he scared all of them in very personal or specific ways. He scared all of them into voting for his innocence. And that's a much bigger scale, but I think that might be either what Montague's doing or what Edwin is doing. I think he's one of the two is scaring all of these people into not taking this bid. And
the other scene, when they talk about the emergency fund, I am 100% with Henry in this episode. I'm sorry, Lucas. We don't agree with you.
This is when I started to be like, okay, Lucas,
what are you doing?
No. Let's not do that. Because first of all, if people are not accepting the bid, you cannot force their money that they paid through taxes to pay for the resort. If they don't want to pay for it, you can't force them to pay for it with the tax money. That's not okay. And second of all, this is a resort. This is not a national emergency need. This is a resort. If this were a hospital, if this were even a train station, a natural disaster, some kind of transportation, something that would be of, use to the country, that would make sense. This is a resort. Resort is for leisure and pleasure. And I get that it would be opening up a lot of jobs, but if you were opening something that was of, actual use to the common day man, that would open up jobs as well. So yeah, no. This is no. I'm sorry, Lucas, but no, this is not the time to be using the rainy
No,
day fund at
no.
all.
And he says that he wants to provide a secure future for Hope Valley and doesn't want to see it left behind. I do think he has good intentions, but
Oh, of course he does.
he's
Yeah.
not executing the right way.
Mhm. Yeah, he definitely has good intentions, and I think that's something that he learned from season 7 when he was running the oil company as a silent partner with Henry. We
Mhm,
saw that he got tired of not seeing the books and he was going to pull out of the company.
mhm,
But Elizabeth kind of pointed out to him, she said, if you do that, a lot of people are going to lose jobs. And I think
mhm,
that situation has taught Lucas the importance of his, businesses and what jobs they provide. So
mhm.
obviously his intentions are really
Yes.
good, but pulling the rainy day fund for a resort project is not it. I'm sorry.
Mm-mm, no.
It's just not. Yeah.
And why don't we just talk about that last scene? The Benson Hills Oil Company plans to file for bankruptcy, and then Edwin gives his little spiel, and Lucas is like, Edwin, this is not about getting people to vote for me. This is about families not being able to afford to put food on the table. And then, this is another reason why I think he does have good intentions, but just not
Yeah.
executing it right. They're out of options unless they go with Montague, since he doesn't want to take Jeanette's. And then he goes and told Montague.
Oh my gosh. Literally, at that moment, I was like, this is the time where you do call Jeanette. But
What?
then, no, he called Montague. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. No, no. Yeah. I mean, at this point, which is worse, taking the rainy day fund or calling Montague? Like, either way is going to result in some
Mm,
kind of mass corruption because you don't want Montague heading off your project because he's just going to put all of his people in charge and take all the profits for himself.
yep.
But then also, if you're taking people's tax money and forcing them to pay for something that they obviously don't want to pay for, it's not good. It's a really bad situation. And the
Yeah.
solution here, I feel like, is to call Jeanette. But we don't know why he's not calling Jeanette. So there could be an even bigger reason than those two reasons why Jeanette is not even on the table at this point.
Yeah.
I just wish we knew what that reason was.
Maybe we
Yeah.
will in the next few
Yeah.
weeks.
It's got to be big though, because right now these are two very, very big issues. So
Yeah.
the issue with Jeanette has to be even bigger than that.
I do remember Elizabeth or Beth Stewart saying in the
Hmm.
interview with Heart to Hearties after episode 6, I think it was mainly about Lucas's storyline, but it could be
Hmm.
about, Nathan and Elizabeth too. But she said that we are like right now on the uphill climb of a roller coaster, and we're about to hit the point where it's just like
Hmm.
the
I
downward
believe it. I
spiral,
can
and
I
buckle
can
your
see
seatbelts.
that. Yeah. I think Lucas in a way is going to kind of emotionally spiral a little bit. And by that, what I mean is things are going to get darker and darker for him. And that's because he has not, anytime Lucas faces any kind of pushback or failure, it's always a big
Mm,
thing. And I this is one thing that makes his character so interesting is
yeah.
that he actually does not always handle pressure in the best way.
Mm-mm.
And I find that fascinating about him. He doesn't handle pressure in the best way. Like
No.
when he was being held hostage with Elizabeth, his instinct was not to hand over the money and be compliant, but to grab a gun and, like take matters into his own hands
Not
or
the
to
best
keep
idea.
keep the cops in the dark about Amos Dixon. Same with Wyman Walden. His first instinct was to keep Bill and Nathan out of the loop, and even Elizabeth at that point, and it led into a big mess. So he doesn't always handle big pressure very well.
No.
And I think it's something that's very consistent with his character, but also very interesting. And I think that's going to get much more, much more stressful for him. Mm-hmm. He's going to have a lot of pressure. And we see a little glimpse of that at the end of this episode when Edwin tells him what the diagnosis is of the situation, the prognosis of the situation.
Yeah.
Basically, he goes up to his desk, slams down the phone, which is what we saw last time he was talking to Jeanette. We saw him slam down the phone twice, I think. And like I said, it's just this mounting pressure is getting to him. And I think we're going to see more of that kind of start to spiral out of control for him. Everyone knows I love like deep dives into psychology. So for me, I'm just sitting back being like, this is good stuff here.
Yes.
Good stuff. Yeah.
And I think that wraps up the resort storyline for this episode. Moving into the Canfields and Faith and Lily. Now, I really only wanted to bring up the Joseph and Minnie scene because I thought his nickname for her was really sweet. When he walks in, he calls her baby, and then they talk about Jacob and how he still hasn't responded to Joseph's letter.
I will say, I think Minnie is going to play a big role in reconciling them.
I think she
because what we know of Joseph is a very proud person. He's very proud of where he comes from, where he stands. It's a good thing. But he is also very stubborn, and I have a feeling that this might not be completely Jacob's fault, is what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say that Joseph is in the wrong, because he likely is not. But I do think that maybe the olive branch could have been extended a little more diplomatically because when he tells Minnie about the letter he wrote, she's like, "Did you apologize?" He's like, no. And it's like, maybe a little bit of honey goes a long way versus a spoonful of honey will catch more flies than a gallon of vinegar. That's what I'll say. Yeah.
Abigail said that to Jack in season 1.
Yes. Honey. Yeah. Joseph needs the honey conversation.
Yes. I called that callback.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, it's a famous quote from Ben Franklin and Abigail.
Yes, I agree. And while we're there, I'll just go ahead and bring this up since we're talking about it. In the interview I just mentioned with Beth Stewart and Dana Brower from Heart to Hearties, there was a Heartieship question asked about the Canfields. One of them, I guess, asks if Jacob was sweet on Minnie, and they say that's classified.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh my gosh. Oh man. That would make a lot of sense.
It's possible. Yeah.
That could be. Yeah. I mean, personally, I was thinking it was some kind of matter of faith, I guess, where maybe Jacob became agnostic or something like that. I can see that, but that's yeah. Wow.
It could go either way.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but I almost want to go with that route because that would get really interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Moving on to Faith and Lily. And that one scene with Tom too, which I thought was pretty cute until they were interrupted. But Faith and Lily at the infirmary. I think we should bring that up first since that was before they see Tom.
Yeah.
Until the end of
that
scene.
That was such a sweet scene.
Yeah.
And, they're so cute, those two. And I
Yes.
love how Faith, it was almost like Tom just like came to her versus vice versa.
Yeah.
We've seen her kind of put herself out there in some
Mhm.
relationships and, but and kind of seek that attention or,
Mhm.
look for the next relationship. But this was different because she's totally wrapped up in Lily, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, out of nowhere, there's Tom, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, hi, Tom." Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love how we never get to see what it would look like if Nathan and Elizabeth went on a date with their kids. We haven't
Yeah.
seen that yet.
Yet. Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. But we got to see here what that might look like with Tom and Lily. Even though
Yeah.
Lily may not be Faith's actual daughter, we got to see a little bit of what that would look like. Oh, you're going on a date with, and you get to bring your kid with you. And it's just, that's part of Faith's single parenthood,
Yeah.
that's just, they're a package deal. So I love how Tom just kind of accepted that
Yeah.
and he was okay with that. And I love their little date, even if it did get interrupted.
Yes.
It was very
And
sweet while it lasted.
yeah.
So
And why don't we just talk about that date? I love when Faith and Lily come in and Lily's like, I love when we go to lunch together or something along those lines.
yes,
I don't think that was
yes,
the exact thing she said, but it was really cute.
yeah, super cute.
And then
Yeah,
when Tom held out Lily's chair, that was precious.
that was so cute. I was like, this is why we need to see more dates like this where the kids are included because it's so cute. It's just so
Yes.
cute.
And then, of course, Faith and Tom are talking, and then they very quickly get interrupted by Minnie and
Oh my gosh.
Lawrence and Molly. The ambush.
Of
That
all
was
people to
hilarious.
interrupt, I was shocked that it was Minnie. I was like, would have never expected Minnie to interrupt, but here we are.
That was hilarious. Like the
It was very
reactions
funny.
from
Yeah.
Faith and Tom. They're like,
Yeah.
is everything okay?
Yeah. I guess they should know better at this point than to
Yeah.
go on a date at the
Yeah.
cafe because they're obviously gonna either get observed or ambushed. So
Yeah.
yeah, they should probably know better at this point, but well, what
Probably.
are you gonna do? Yeah.
Yes. And just while we're there, I'll go ahead and bring up Paul Redford's comment from his interview that was just posted. When the admins asked about Faith and Lily's storyline and happy ending the rest of this season, he said that was classified. Paul, that is.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm not surprised at that because I do think we're gonna have some not drama, but I think Faith is gonna go through a period where she might have to face the idea of giving up Lily again. And
Maybe.
I think that's
Yeah.
gonna be hard for her, just like it was hard for Abigail when Cody and Becky's aunt showed up in town.
Yeah. And I did see on Twitter, I think it was yesterday, that somebody posted the cast list or part of it for episode 9, and Dora is on there.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
And there were those pictures with Andrea and
Mhm.
Chloe,
Yeah.
specifically Andrea, where she looks really emotional.
Mhm. Yeah, so I definitely think we're gonna see some of that.
Yeah.
It's I do think it's gonna end well for them for the
Hmm.
most part, but I don't think it's gonna be a smooth path.
No. Moving on to Nathan, Elizabeth, and Tom and the choir. They had some good scenes in this episode.
They were good, just not enough. I need more.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did love Elizabeth's journal entry. She says, at what point did I stop feeling only grief when I thought about you and began feeling gratitude instead? Gratitude for the time we had together, for our wonderful son, and for the sense that you are always with me. Today of all days, I feel you near. I know Jack Jr. does too, and I hope you know you'll always have a special place in my heart, no matter what the future holds. And I also have to bring up, I loved the transition that they did when she says, no matter what the future holds, and it immediately cuts to the Mountie office and Nathan.
Yes, I love
Brilliant.
that. The whole journal entry, it reminded me there's a line in Jack's funeral episode where Florence, I believe it is, she says to Elizabeth, now I'm able to think of my husband Paul and I smile instead of cry. Basically,
Yeah.
she's reached that point, and I never thought we would fully reach that point with Elizabeth, but we're really close at this point. Like she's almost there, and I would dare to say yes, she is there. So
Yeah,
that
I
was
think she
something I
is.
wasn't sure if we would be reaching that, but I love seeing the progress of Elizabeth processing her grief and actual like progress happening where it's not just grief. It's also, acceptance at this point.
Yeah. I think she's pretty much there. She's out of her grief stage.
Yeah.
She's at peace now.
Yeah. I think she's still got a little bit of fear and trepidation about moving forward with Nathan, but I do think the grief aspect of her loss of Jack is healed at this point.
And the grave scene. This was one of my favorite scenes. And Elizabeth is talking to Jack. And she says, you'd be so proud of him. Our boy is growing up. Tears.
Yeah. Any scene by Jack's grave is always good.
Yeah.
It's always a good scene.
Yeah.
And, like seeing even the difference between this year and last year, it's huge. Like Elizabeth, she's not overly emotional. She's, not feeling as much of the sadness as she is now. She's getting to tell Jack all of these amazing things about little Jack. So I think she's really embracing her life now instead of mourning the past and living in the past. She's really embracing this new life.
I think so too. I loved the transition to Tom showing up by him catching the balloons. That was brilliantly done.
Yeah. Just another example of how the camera work is really good this season.
Yes.
Like very thoughtful. They're paying a lot of attention to that, and I love that.
And I love when Tom and Jack meet and Tom pays his respects to his brother. Tears.
You can see how emotional he is in that scene, and Elizabeth can kind of tell and kind of moves off to the side, and she's done her grieving, but I don't think Tom has fully. And so for him to be at the grave is a very raw feeling for him because he's never like been faced with this is the grave. This is where he is buried. Like he may have heard like, oh, Jack died, he's no longer around, but to see the grave is a whole nother level of, really seeing the visualization of it. So I think that's why he might have been a little overwhelmed with the emotions there.
Max did a fantastic job. This entire episode, really.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And just before we move on, I love how he took one of the yellow flowers from the bouquet and put it in his label.
Yeah. Cool detail about that flower. He does wear it throughout the episode.
Yes, he does.
But one detail I noticed is that in the last scene, the flower is wilted. The rest of the scenes, the flower is completely fine. But in that scene, the flower is wilted. And I think that was on purpose. And I love that little detail in there.
Yeah, me too. I was going to bring that up, but I'm glad that you did. Because I noticed it too.
Yeah.
And just briefly, I got to mention the scene with Elizabeth, Jack, and Tom in town. We hear that school is out for summer, and then we hear what Tom does. He is a salesman of happiness, basically, is what he says. But really sheet music. He plays songs for people, and if they like it, he sells them the music. He works for JB Sweeney Publishing and Musical Promotions. He also helps Sweeney scout new acts and has been signing up local choirs for the festival in Salt Lake City.
Sorry. It reminded me immediately of the musical The Music Man,
Yeah. I've never seen it,
which
but I've heard of it.
it's very similar. And actually, believe it or not, Tom gives me very much the vibe of
I could see
The
that.
Music Man. Yeah, so that because The Music Man is technically about a scam artist who sells music and happiness to like towns everywhere. I knew this was going to be a scam before the episode was over because if you've
Oh
watched The
no.
Music Man, you know it's going to be a scam. But yeah, so I wasn't surprised about that at all.
No, I wasn't either. When the episode was progressing, I was figuring out something was going to
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah. The minute Tom said he sold happiness, I was like, "Oh no." Here we go.
Oh my gosh. He brings up the breakup with Lucas, and of course, Elizabeth says that she's doing okay. She's just glad that they're friends. And then he sees Faith, and he's like, "Is that Nurse Carter?" And
Mhm.
then she mentions she's now a doctor, and then he brings up, along with Elizabeth, really, the joyride with Julie,
Oh my
because
gosh.
Faith took care of him.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
I love how Elizabeth says, Jack may never have told you this, but he always knew you'd find your way. And when you did, the sky would be the limit. He believed in you, and I believe in you. I love Elizabeth and Tom's dynamic, and Aaron and
Mhm.
Matt's
Yeah.
dynamic.
She's very supportive and
Yeah.
we all know based off of season 2 that wasn't always the case.
Nope.
But it's nice to see her kind of like in her own way, not in the same way that
Yeah.
Jack did, but kind of filling that role as being the encouragement and helping keep Tom on the straight and narrow. She's kind of filling that role that Jack left behind. And
Yes, I
I
agree.
love how they didn't try to make it so that she was just Jack 2.0 to him. I love how they kept it in her own
Mhm.
style of doing that,
Yes.
very positive, very encouraging, maybe not as like groundbreaking and bringing up the past and everything like that, but definitely supportive and being what Tom needed in that moment.
Yes. I still remember the first time Elizabeth met Tom, he was literally thrown at her feet
Mhm. Yep. Yes.
with Julie and Viola,
Mhm. Yep.
along with Jack, who was also thrown at their feet.
Yes. Good times.
This does need to be brought up just quickly. The Mounties have changed their name to the RCMP, and of course, that stands for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Mhm. We knew it was gonna come. I didn't know we would get a whole
Mhm.
scene dedicated to it, and I liked
I'm
that
glad
because
that we
it's kind
did.
of a little mini history lesson inside
Yeah,
the episode.
yeah.
But I liked the camera work in this scene, and I liked how Nathan likes the red surge. He doesn't want the red surge to change, and I love how he's very adamant about that. He's like, "Oh, over my dead body, we're not changing the surge."
Yes, I know some people I've seen concerned about that comment, but they're not gonna do anything to Nathan.
No, they didn't even want to do anything to Jack. They had to.
They are not going to kill off Nathan.
No, they would never do that. Never in a million years. So
No.
yeah, don't worry. It was just poorly worded.
It was just not the best lines considering Jack.
Yeah, considering people's trauma around Jack, maybe not the best thing. It's kind of along in the that the Hallmark show Ride?
Yeah.
Well, in the Hallmark show Ride, Marcus Rosner's character, spoiler
Yeah.
alert,
Yes.
dies.
I
in
know
the
that,
beginning.
yeah.
He dies in the ring, and his wife
First scene.
is first scene. It's tragic, but anyway, his wife, his widow, I guess you would say, is dating this
Missy.
other guy. Missy is dating this other guy named Gus. And
Mhm.
Missy's about to go out into the ring to do her thing. And Gus, right before she goes out, he's like, "You're gonna kill him out there." Let's just say it's not the best thing to say right before that. Right
No.
before you do that when your husband literally died doing that. So yeah.
No.
Not the best use of verbiage there.
No, but they are not just going to repeat it. They are not going to kill off Nathan because one, Kevin McGarry is not leaving the show.
I get that
Not
everyone's
happening.
paranoid, but
They
no. my mind didn't even go there. I was just like,
Mine
when
didn't
I heard
either.
people were worried after that, I was just like, come on, guys. It's not gonna happen again. This is why we barely see people in danger anymore because people can't handle it. Let her alone. They are not gonna kill off anybody. So
No. They would only do it if Kevin were leaving the show, and Kevin's not leaving.
no, of course not. No.
Kevin is not like Dan. Now, no offense to Dan, because I love Dan, but they are two different people.
Yeah. Kevin is not going anywhere at all.
No, and they would not have made this change or flip in the script last season if they were just going to kill off Nathan. No.
Yeah. Not happening. Sorry,
Okay.
guys.
End of that conversation.
Yeah, it's not even worth like dedicating so much time to because it's just not happening.
No.
Sorry, guys.
But moving on. Elizabeth and Tom at the cafe, and of course, this is when they hear Allie and Angela singing By the Beautiful Sea, and that is a beautiful song, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They meet Tom, and Allie wants him to scout the choir. Then Nathan meets Tom, and I love how when they're meeting, Elizabeth keeps her eyes on Nathan. Like she's making sure he's okay.
Yeah, because I think she knew that conversation would be hard for him. Well, for both parties, but specifically for Nathan because of Fort Clay and everything like that. We all know that that's what's going through Nathan's mind. And I think he was even on the verge of telling Tom all of that. Like when he told Tom that he had never met Jack.
Yeah.
I think he wanted to tell Tom, but at the same time, there's always that question of should I tell him that, like, because yeah, I don't know. It's a tough situation that Nathan's in. I have a feeling we might even get to see him tell Tom next week.
I was about to say we might see that
Mhm.
this week.
Yeah, it's definitely possible because it felt like it was like we were right there about to have that conversation, and then it kind of like moved on. And I think we are going to have it, or at least touch on it briefly. I don't know. I feel like it's something that does need to be brought up, though.
I think it will. And then I also love how Elizabeth says, Hope Valley has been lucky to have you here. And I think she means more than just Hope Valley.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, she's the town.
Yes, of course. And I like that she added that comment because I think that, even if she doesn't quite know yet that how Nathan feels about being in Jack's shadow, I think that she does know maybe some of that, like the background that goes into Nathan coming to Hope Valley. And she wants to like assure him that she is grateful that he's there.
Yes. Also, I gotta mention Nathan's smile at Jack when he walks up to Tom and he's like, race you.
That was really cute.
I'm almost just excited to see Nathan become Jack's dad than I am for Nathan and Elizabeth. But of course, I'm excited for Nathan and Elizabeth's story too.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be really cute. I just hope they get more scenes together
I
because it's
think they
so
will.
cute.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we know that there is a scene coming up with the two of them, according to Derek Thompson.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Then Nathan and Elizabeth talk about Jack's birthday, and I thought it was sweet how Nathan apologized and Elizabeth is like, no, it's okay. And then they talk about Tom and, living in Jack's shadow. And I love how she just stops him and Nathan picks up on it and she says, I don't see you as being in anyone's shadow. I thought that was really sweet.
I'm in the camp where I'm hoping that that's not the end of that conversation because I would love to hear a little bit more. I think that Nathan has every right to wonder about that or feel that way. It's not just him, trying to fish for
Mm-hmm.
reassurance or whatever. He does feel that way because Elizabeth literally told him, I've been trying to find Jack in you,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very, very painful thing
Yeah.
to say to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And she's never told him otherwise since then.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, he's going to feel that way. And I was almost slightly annoyed even that she was surprised by him feeling that way. Like, of course he's going to feel that way after you said
Mm-hmm.
that. But that gives me hope. The fact that it was so brief of a conversation, it gives me hope that it will be addressed later. The fact that she did say that. Because for me, I love the scene. It's very cute, but it doesn't fix that, I guess.
I
It
agree.
doesn't explain why she said that all those years ago.
I know what you mean. I mean, the scene didn't bother me. I'm glad that she said what she did. Of course, I want more, and I think we will get
Mm-hmm.
more. But I really enjoyed the scene, and I thought it was a cute moment between them, especially when they do a
Mm-hmm.
little flirting.
Oh yeah, of course. I thought it was super cute and
Yeah,
super sweet,
yeah,
and I liked it for sure.
yes. I love when
Yeah.
he says, "I'll see you later," then, and she's like, "I hope so."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was cute.
Yes, and his smile after she walks away was everything. That was priceless.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Super cute.
Nathan's
Yeah.
happy, so that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
I got to bring up the choir singing This Little Light of Mine. That was one of my favorite moments in the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they sounded really good.
Yes, they did. And I love that song too. Of course, they are given the spot, but they have to pay a $65 entry fee, $5 per person. I love the look on Emily and Allie's face. They're like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
And really
they just
everyone's.
thought they just thought they were going to Salt Lake City for free.
Oh my gosh. And then can we talk about Allie's excitement when talking to her dad? And
I
Nathan
love
was
the
like,
little spin she does. She just does a little spin right in front of him, and he's just like, "Hold on."
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
At this point, he's starting to understand like what being a teenage girl looks like, or he's kind of like, "Oh boy, here we go."
Yes.
Like, there's no way for him to fully understand it, but obviously he's starting to recognize the patterns of behavior where it's like, oh boy, here we go. Emotional
Yeah.
roller coaster.
Yeah. Of course, he wants to know more about Sweeney. He's like, who is
Mm-hmm.
Sweeney? Or who is this JB Sweeney?
Right. Yeah.
And the entry fee. And then his reaction or his facial expression when Allie walks away was priceless. He was like, okay.
Yeah.
Nathan and Elizabeth in town. And first, it was Elizabeth at the cafe with the Canfields and the Yost, and they're, taking all the money for the entry fee. And then Nathan comes in and he's hesitant. I love how Elizabeth supports Nathan in her concern. And then they agree to talk
Mm-hmm.
to Tom, and they're walking. through town to, I guess, the Queen of Hearts, and the arm touch was priceless. I loved
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
then, he's talking about how he's a Mountie. He should, be suspicious. I don't think suspicious is the word he used, but, he should be alert about these kinds of
Yeah.
things. And Elizabeth says, "Can you just try not to be a Mountie just this once?"
Yeah. She's like, "Can you just turn it off for a few minutes?"
Yes. And then they talk to Tom, and Nathan wants to know about Sweeney and how long he's worked for him, which is a few months. And kind of broke my heart when Tom, assumes that they're trying to accuse him of doing something that's not right. And he says, once a screw up, always a screw up.
Yeah. And it reminds me of he and Jack were sharing a scene together,
At the
and
train
he
station or Mountie office.
Mountie office, and he says to Jack, he's like, "You think I'm just one big screw up, don't you?" And you could tell that the writers did their research for season 11 for him to use the same exact term. Apparently that's what I think he thinks that of himself, not so much that other people think it of him.
Yeah.
I think he thinks that of himself, which is why that vision of being a screw up has never changed over the years. He still holds on to that, and I think it's because he thinks of himself in that way. But
Yeah.
I think it's good that he has people to support him and making him believe that that's not true.
And we gotta mention Ned and Florence singing Daisy Daisy at the church. That was really cute. And then, of course, Tom is late. So Elizabeth goes to find him. She finds out from Mike that he has left. And then the horse ride.
That was a great scene. I
Yes.
loved that.
Yes.
Yes.
Get on, hold on. I loved that.
Yes.
And also, can we talk about the reaction from Mike and some of the other people in town?
They're all like, "What is going on?"
Oh, they're definitely not a secret now.
Nope, not at all.
Also, not related really to the scene, but to Mike. I think I saw a comment the other day, it might have been yesterday, where someone was comparing Mike to Kirk on Gilmore Girls.
Oh my gosh, that is so accurate. That's so accurate. I love that.
Yeah, it is kind of accurate. And I love Kirk on Gilmore Girls too. He's
That's
great.
extremely accurate. Yeah. Kirk might be a little more quirky than
yes, yeah.
Than I was going to say Ben. Not Ben.
Mike.
Mike. But yeah, that is true. He's the Kirk
Hope Valley
of
Kirk.
Hope Valley. Yeah.
Or the Kirk of Hope Valley.
Yeah, somebody needs to make that comparison, like make a meme about it or something.
You know what? I should do that. That's a real idea.
You should do it. Yes.
Hearties don't steal my idea.
Yeah.
I called it first.
Oh, yes.
But anyway, the last scene when Nathan and Elizabeth go to the train station and they find Tom. When Tom said, "All I ever wanted was for Jack to be proud of me." Tears.
Yeah. I think ever since Jack died, also before Jack died, but ever since Jack died, that is mostly what motivates Tom to be a good person, is to make Jack proud. And yeah, I think that's a big part of it. So it was, of course, sad to see that, but also, it makes sense.
Yes.
For him to feel that way.
Sweeney is a con man, and he took off with all the money from all the towns.
Didn't see that one coming. Just kidding. I did.
Oh, yeah. And of course, Tom thinks that Sweeney turned him into one too.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because Tom was just doing a job. And technically, Tom did all the work without getting paid either. So technically, he got scammed as well.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's the only one left to take the blame for everything that happened and all the lost money. So basically, he's going to have to repay everybody while Sweeney gets away with everything, even though Sweeney's the one who took all the money. So I felt really bad for Tom in this moment. But at the same time, you know, you could kind of see it coming. So
yeah. He says, if Jack were here, he'd tell me what to do next. And Elizabeth says, we are here and we are going to find a way out of this. And I love how she used we. I mean, in my opinion, they're totally already a couple because, for one, she's calling it we. And I thought in this episode, in the upcoming episode too, they're already acting like a married couple.
There's definitely some moments like them saying we and stuff like that for sure. That definitely seemed like that.
Yes. But I think that pretty much wraps up our episode 7 discussion. Do we want to chat about this week?
Sure. Yeah.
Brother's Keeper, which is the title of this week.
Which I think has to do with Joseph's brother showing up, but also Tom, because Tom is technically Elizabeth's brother-in-law.
Yes.
And so, yeah, she is being her brother's keeper in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
We get the Voices of the Valley Music Festival to help raise money to pay back all the towns, of course. Maisie is back and wants Tom arrested. This sneak peek, they were totally acting like a married couple in this scene too. Like,
yeah, that was pretty funny.
Nathan,
I was just glad Elizabeth didn't like get all defensive and angry about it, because I think she knows that Nathan has to do that. I was expecting her to kind of react the way she reacted in season 9 when Nathan had to put Lucas in jail. I was kind of expecting her to kind of react like that for if Nathan had to put Tom in jail, but I'm glad she's not reacting that way.
Yeah, I'm glad too.
Because I think she can see, yes, Tom is in trouble and a lot of people owe a lot of money because of something he was involved with. So I think she's at least able to see that.
And I love how she says, Nathan, are you really going to arrest Tom? And he's like, well, let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, because he knows he will have to if it does come to that. Yeah. Which is going to be rough. But
Nathan and Elizabeth are getting their first dance.
Yes, it's about time. I'm excited. I think it's going to be good. Yeah.
I think possibly it's going to be a lady's choice as a callback to fix the season 6 Founders Day dance when she chose Lucas.
I think that would be really fun.
Yeah.
And I hope so. I would also like to see Nathan ask Elizabeth to dance, though, because I think that would be a big moment for him, too.
Yeah. It could be that, too. I mean, I do think that they're going to be standing next to each other already. Yes. Nathan and Allie singing and playing the guitar. Yes! We're finally getting Nathan on the guitar. Yes. Or really, Kevin.
Yes. Yes, yes. I hope they give a little like backstory about maybe why we haven't seen that until now. I kind of would love that too.
Yes. Nathan and Tom have a talk. Now, we did briefly mention what we think it could be, and I believe it's very possible that Fort Clay could come up.
I definitely think Fort Clay could potentially come up. I think also just the fact that Nathan's also a Mountie like Jack, and kind of how that all works. I think that could definitely be a part of it as well.
And I do think that Tom will give his blessing at the end of this episode.
I think so. I definitely think so. If there were any reason for Tom to come back into the story, I think that would be the big reason.
Yes. And also some very interesting points really quickly to share from Paul Redford's recent interview that was just dropped. I think it was yesterday or day before. It was sometime this week. We hear from him Paul that there will be more to the seeing Jack line, which makes me very happy.
I'm very happy to hear that for
Yes.
sure.
He says it's not something they could resolve in one conversation. A conversation along those lines in the memory of Jack will continue. There's a lot of past tied up in this, and they owe a lot more because these two will really express what they are to each other. It takes story and experiences. It's not just talking, but living life together. The shadow comment was to show how far they've come, but that there's still some ways to go, and that it was tiptoeing around the subject. The scene from this episode is
I'm
what,
very, very happy to hear that as
yeah,
like a Nathan and Elizabeth fan. I'm
yeah,
very happy to hear that because I want to see them deal with this. Like,
yes,
I think it's something they need to get into the nitty-gritty
yeah,
of what was said and kind of make it right. So I'm very happy to hear that. I think
yes.
that's great.
And then when talking about the case and Nathan's involvement, growing, he says Nathan is putting himself at risk with the case, but he's doing it for friends he can trust. He can only go so far as he's allowed to go. He's leaving the door open for Rosemary and Bill to do what they need to do. He's just as dedicated as they are to getting to the truth, but he's working with a different set of limits. And I think part of those limits is cough, cough, hard grapes.
Oh yeah. I would say that's the biggest limit. That's basically his ball and chain in this situation.
Yep. Yes.
But also I love how even though like Nathan's almost like the anchor keeping Rosemary and Bill from tipping their hand in a way
Mm-hmm.
because they are so like enthusiastic about everything and
Mm-hmm.
so just fired up, and he's kind of the voice of reason where whenever they're like ready to turn it all in, he's like, okay, let's just take a moment,
Yeah.
let's figure out if this is enough, and then he'll kind of point out that maybe it's not enough, maybe they need a little more. So I
Yeah.
love how he brings a different set of eyes to it, not just
Yes.
the enthusiasm, but also the common sense, I feel
Yeah.
like.
I agree. We haven't seen the last of Montague, and we haven't seen Lucas hit his low point yet, which we already talked about that earlier
Right.
on, that we're on the uphill climb of the roller coaster right now, and
Yeah.
it's about to just
Right. Exactly.
be the very fast downhill
Yep.
slope.
Yeah.
Lucas's vocation is being governor, not staying in Hope Valley and being a saloon owning husband to the school teacher. It would not have made him happy. There's an underlying sense of a bigger purpose with him. He has to fully embrace what's in front of him now before he can have a romance. And I think that's good. I do want to see
I
a
think so
love
too.
story with Lucas, but he needs to focus on this right now.
I completely agree. And I agree with the comment that he wouldn't have been happy in
Mm-hmm.
that domestic life because even when he was living it, he was still feeling restless and looking for other avenues
Yeah.
outside of just that. So I definitely think it makes sense that he wouldn't have been completely happy doing that.
We will see a version of redemption with Tom in episode 8, and I'm glad to hear that. And
Mhm.
the last very interesting point I have to bring up, because I did not when we were talking about episode 7, but Paul suspects J.B. Sweeney is an Easter egg to the Inspector Mr. Sweeney from the coal mine trial in season 2. Hearties, if you picked up on this, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, good catch if you did. I did not. I didn't think of that until days later when other people were putting it out there. So yeah, good catch.
I did recognize the name and, thought, that's interesting because there was a character I could see the
Mhm.
two, but I didn't put all the pieces together until I saw someone else point it out.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a nice little Easter egg for
Yes.
sure.
Now, if they are actually the same person, that would be something to see.
For sure.
because we know the inspector, Mr. Sweeney, was not really on the up and up either. I mean, he sold out the widows. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's true.
To Gowan's lawyer and the judge.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, more so Gowan's lawyer than the judge, because the judge, Parker, wasn't falling for it.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, he didn't fall for it. That is. I can't wait for next week. I think it'll be another great episode to talk about.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think we're on the second half of the season now, and usually that's when the plot starts to pick up a little bit. So I'm excited for that.
Yep, I agree. Episode 8 last season was the apple juice scene.
Mm-hmm.
But we got some other stuff as well with the water storyline and the governor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it'll be fun to see what's coming up. I can't wait.
I'm excited.
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be good.
All right, Hearties. Well, I think that wraps up our review of When Calls the Heart, Season 11, Episode 7, Facing the Music. If you enjoyed this episode, you can like this video and share your thoughts on it in the comments. If you want to stay up to date on all of our reviews for the rest of the season, you can subscribe to this channel and make sure to turn on the bell so you are alerted when new episodes come. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a great day or night wherever you are in the world, and we will see you next week. We love y'all. Bye!